Following the breakup of Clips, Pusha T's development as a solo artist is fascinating. Push always had the talent to spit lethal verses, complemented by his drug-dealing past and unique voice. However, as much as I love My Name Is My Name and Fear of God 2, there was always just something missing from Pusha T projects. You would have moments of greatness with Pusha T proving himself to be a lyrical mastermind and floating over Kanye production. But every Pusha T project lacked some form of unity and flow. That wasn't until 2018. Push's third studio album Daytona would prove to be his magnum opus. A 21-minute 7-track record with absolutely no skips. Every beat hits, every bar connects. This to many is considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums of the 2010s. That's why following Daytona, everyone was so interested as to what Push would do next musically. He had big shoes to fill, but finally, 4 years later, Pusha T has released his latest record, It's Almost Dry. One thing setting this release apart from the rest of his discography is the fact that this album actually has a narrative. Push would be heavily inspired by the 2019 film Joker and take on the role of the villain of rap. You can argue that the seeds for this character were set in 2018 in the midst of Push's intense feud with Drake. But the man who would lead Pusha T into the Joaquin Phoenix Joker theme would be Pharrell Williams. According to Push himself, Pharrell would tell him that he was too talented to only be putting out mixtapes and help him structure a more narratively driven album. Push has numerous iconic ad-libs, but a new one would be introduced to listeners on It's Almost Dry. Mimicking the cold nature of the Joker's laugh, Pharrell would actually record Push in the studio, doing a similar cackle. Pharrell would further explain the thought process behind the laugh in an interview with Hip Hop Now, saying, "That laugh that's on the album, I'm not making that up. He's not acting. That's literally who he is. He's so karma-based that he loves when karma comes back to strike. It tickles his soul like a little child. So when you're hearing him say those things, I strategically place those laughs where those bars are because those bars hit you the same way that karma hits him and he laughs. So I wanted people to know that about his personality." Pharrell would play a pivotal role in the direction and sound of It's Almost Dry. Of the 12 tracks on the record, the Neptunes would have production credits on half of them. Behind the other 6 beats, Kanye West. Putting 2 of the greatest living producers in an inadvertent versus battle is absolutely genius on Push's part. There would be a sense of competition as both would be pressured to put in the best effort possible when working on their respective tracks. But while Pharrell and Kanye are both so talented as producers, their methods for working alongside Push in the studio are so drastically different. While Pharrell chose to lead Pusha in a more storytelling direction, Push would explain how Kanye prefers pure Pusha T raps, those lethal bars on Infrared, for example. I think the album really benefits from this back and forth flow as you go from a Kanye produced banger to Pharrell tying things back together in the narrative. It makes for a very easy listen for the listener. Push would work on this album throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and the 4-year gap between Daytona and It's Almost Dry would actually inspire the name for this record. As fans repeatedly asked where the new record was or when they could expect a release date, Push said he almost felt like an artist who was putting the finishing touches on his master painting. When someone comes by an art studio and asks when a painting is going to be finished, you got to explain to them that you got to wait for this layer to dry before you can pick up the brush again. In Pusha T's own words, you have to wait for masterpieces. But of course, Push's background as a drug dealer ties into the name and remains a heavy part of his lyrical content. When people are waiting on their product and keep asking you for it, you tell them you can come pick it up when it's dry. Push's 4th studio album would have 3 singles dropped before its official release. Diet Coke on February 8th, Hear Me Clearly on March 4th, and Neck and Wrist on April 6th. It's Almost Dry would release on April 22nd, 2022, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200. With features from the likes of Jay-Z, Kid Cudi, and Malice, along with production handled by Ye and the Neptunes, It's Almost Dry acts as Pusha T's most commercially successful and narratively focused project to date. But in order to truly understand a masterful painting, you need to get up close and study the details. It's Almost Dry begins with the opening track, Brambleton. The title is actually a callback to a street in Push's hometown of Norfolk, Virginia, where his mother worked at a pharmacy. This intro sees Push reflecting on his past in Virginia, speaking on his come up in the music industry and former Clip's associates, mainly his former manager, Anthony Gonzalez. So this guy, Anthony Gonzalez, also known as Jeezy, managed Clips, Pusha T, and his brother, No Malice. And he would participate in an interview with Vlad TV where he would essentially say that Clips was rapping about his drug activity whenever they spoke about moving coke. This is a major accusation as Pusha T is known as a coke rapper. The basics of his lyrics is his past as a drug dealer. Push responds here in the opening track of It's Almost Dry, relating Gonzalez's betrayal to that of Fredo in The Godfather. This is a cold opener to a great album. The first thing you hear is the phrase, "They're gonna die." Now this phrase is heard 2 times on this record. First on the opening track, and then on Open Air. 2 songs where Push reflects on his past in Virginia as a cocaine dealer. Reflection is the theme of this first track, but it isn't where Push's story ends. While many live in the past, Pusha learns from it as he continues to thrive in the present day. After addressing characters from his past, the pace quickens as Push flexes his hustler mentality on track 2, Let the Smokers Shine the Coops. This is a banger. You got the fast-paced tempo, you got some of Pusha T's most fun bars on this album where he's referring to himself as the Dr. Seuss of the cocaine world. And also this track really sees Push shift his tone when addressing Gonzalez. He once again mentions the former Clips manager's comments, but this time his tone is more confident rather than hurt by the betrayal. I absolutely love the chorus on this track as it sees Push own up to the idea that his way of making profit is inherently evil.
His money is the evil root. Let the smoker shine the coops.
Of course, Push is speaking on selling cocaine. His way of making a profit, making money, is selling a product that people can get addicted to and potentially can ruin their life. Now tying this into the Joker theme, Joker is a really difficult character for Batman to understand. He's a character without a moral compass. Batman's butler Alfred Pennyworth said it best. When trying to describe the Joker to Bruce Wayne, he simply said, "Some people just want to watch the world burn." Push, in the same sense as Joker, thrives in chaos. Other people's pain and addiction is his profit. That profit, of course, leads to luxury. And on track 3, Dreamin' of the Past, Push, along with Kanye West, reflects on the accomplishments he has made since his days of dealing. This track was actually a Kanye song that Pusha T begged for. It was actually almost played at one of Ye's Donda listening parties back in 2021, being seen on a notepad during the Donda MBS sessions. The track samples Donny Hathaway's cover of John Lennon's Jealous Guy and showcases Kanye's signature sampling formula that has created so many classic songs in the past. Push even mentions Kanye's talent for sampling and creating amazing beats in his first verse. Although Kanye did handle production for this track, Pharrell's influence is also felt on the song, as Push is actually singing on the hook. Push spoke with The Breakfast Club about how Pharrell really forced him to focus on melodies, and we see him really stepping out of his box on this track. Looking back on King Push from 2013, yeah, Pusha T's come a long way.
I rap nigga about trap niggas on sing hooks.
Ye's verse on the tail end of this track is very brief and actually untouched from when he first worked on it during the Donda era. Ironically, it fits the meaning of the track perfectly, as he reflects on how he wanted the house that was seen in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as a kid, but his taste evolved as he became prosperous. Both coming from hustler backgrounds, one making beats on the side, the other dealing coke with his brother, Push and Ye have come a long way from their humble roots. Track 4 is Neck and Wrist, featuring Jay-Z and Pharrell Williams. Like Dreaming of the Past, Push reflects here with his feature about his luxurious life. But in contrast to Dreaming of the Past, Push shares a little bit more of a similar background with Jay-Z. Both he and Hove have a past in drug dealing and have made a career off of coke rap. Pharrell and Push on the hook speak on trap houses, and of course the constant phrase repeated on this track is neck and wrist, don't lie. This of course refers to jewelry and watches, as expensive chains are often a way to express success, especially as a public figure. I gotta point out how unique Push's flow is here on this track. It's almost laid back as he's just riding on this really smooth Neptune's beat. The coke references too in Push's verse are just so deep, like mentioning Richard Pryor's incident of setting himself on fire when freebasing, which is essentially a way to smoke cocaine. Before Pryor suffered the burns from setting himself on fire, freebasing was an underground method, but his incident made it public knowledge. Jay's verse sees him flex his status as well, even take a few shots at some critics, but I just love how he wraps up his lines here. He's confronting the people who believe that the only reason he was able to become the king of New York was due to Biggie Smalls passing away. He and Biggie were part of a supergroup, and while everyone wants to compare the two, he's saying here that the two would have ruled together as members of the commission. Hove reassures the naysayers, saying that no matter what, he was going to be a legend, because it was in God's plan, it was his destiny. Push goes solo once again on track 5, Just So You Remember, and the lack of a feature is intentional. Push uses this song to remind everyone in the music industry exactly who he is, that being one of the best in the game. The Colonel Bagshot sample almost sets a scene of a carnival, like a big reveal is about to be made to a crowd. Prevalent at carnivals, of course, is clowns.
My Joker smile, you know who the villain is.
Track 6 also has an amazing sample that's almost already iconic. Fat Joe signals the start of Diet Coke. The chorus of this song is so catchy. Pusha T just rides over Kanye production and never fails to find different ways to make cocaine references. This was the lead single for It's Almost Dry, and its release was accompanied by a music video that was inspired by the MV for Flavor in Your Ear. In the video, Push is vibing with Ye, accompanied by a couch in a white room. Now my favorite line on this song has to be, I'm still pitching baby, batter up. Pitching is a reference to dealing drugs, but of course it's a term that's commonly used in the sport of baseball. It's just another example of Pusha T's lyrical genius. This beat is actually 18 years old and was originally made for 88 Keys' beat tape back in 2004 as an interlude. All these years later, the beat is timeless and Push's clever bars proved it to be a hit. Controversy unfortunately surrounds the 7th track on It's Almost Dry. That song is Rock and Roll, featuring Kid Cudi and Kanye West. Kanye and Cudi obviously had their fallout earlier this year, but if you can get past that drama, this is a fantastic cut. Interestingly enough, this is the one track that Ye and Pharrell both have production credits on, as Kanye allegedly just couldn't get the drums right. Kid Cudi does a smooth yet gritty sounding chorus, along with a very fast-paced instrumental. Beyonce's song 1+1 is sampled here, and of course, with Kanye production, taking a sample and making it sound like, you know, that chipmunk tone, it's just signature Kanye. In his first verse on this track, Push shouts out Cudi and Kanye, but I'm actually a bigger fan of his second verse, where he says, I'm the broker, I'm the joker, in the deck, Arthur Fleck, when he's pissed, 666. Arthur Fleck is the real name of Joker, and Push is really reassuring the listener of his evil with that 666 line. Along with 666 being the devil's favorite number, it's also Drake's signature ad-lib. Here, Push is reminding people of the depths he has gone to get even with someone. Almost like how Joker shoots Murray Franklin on live television at the climax of the movie. Although it is an absolutely brutal scene, if you watch the movie, you'd know that the viewers sympathize with Joker even though he's got blood on his hands, because his whole life he's been oppressed by corporate suits, and Murray is the perfect representation of just that. Should Joker have shot a man on live television? Absolutely not, but if you see the events that led up to it, you would see why the guy was pushed to that point. Should Pusha T have revealed the identity of Drake's son? Definitely not. But if you look at the subliminal disses and everything that led up to Pusha releasing the story of Adidon, you understand that every action has a reaction. Kanye's verse mainly discusses the current divorce situation with Kim Kardashian and really reassures the major themes of Donda from the past year, essentially applying his mother's teachings to his current life as his family dynamic undergoes a drastic shift. According to Pusha T, he planned for a music video for this track to be shot the week of its Almost Dry's release, and it would kind of act as a point where Ye and Cudi could meet in person and make up, but after Cudi put out the tweet and Push talked to Cudi about putting out the track, being that him and Kanye weren't on good terms, he knew that he had to cancel it. The music video, if he did bring them together, would not have went well. However, we did get a music video for our next track, that song being Call My Bluff. And this song's really underrated in my opinion. It has a carnival-esque sound with the beat, and the hook is genius. You're driving down the highway and looking at billboards, or you're watching TV or something, you always see a company promoting their number and their way to contact them in a catchy jingle or a phrase. Push is speaking about a service as fast as Amazon Prime, to where if you speak against him and try to slander him, he can have people come and pull up and deal with the situation. He's above the petty social media beef and is actually taunting his competition to call his bluff. This track plays with Pusha T's reputation of performing lethal diss tracks, and has an eerie vibe to match the feeling that one might feel if they try to speak against King Push. Track 9 is Scrape It Off the Top, featuring Lil Uzi Vert and Don Toliver. And while Don Toliver flows really well on the chorus, it's a catchy hook and everything, this in my opinion is the weakest track on It's Almost Dry. I'm a huge fan of Lil Uzi Vert, and honestly it just feels like his verse here was just unnecessary. Track 10 picks things back up again with Hear Me Clearly. This track was actually the first song made for this record. I guess Nigo kind of begged Pusha T to allow him to release it as a single and put it on his DJ Khaled-esque mixtape I Know Nigo. Push reluctantly did it as a favor because he and Nigo are pretty good friends, but had a pretty smart idea in mind as a way to differentiate the single and the version that was put on Nigo's album and the version of the track that would appear on his record It's Almost Dry. The song was supposed to have a feature from none other than Nas. However, Nas never pulled through. I guess they even saw each other a few months back and Nas was like, yeah, I'll send it to you, and he just never did. Despite what we could have had, Push still absolutely eats up this raw and cold beat with some insane bars. The chorus sees Pusha T take on Jay-Z's words from a verse on Rick Ross's track Freemason. It makes for a great chorus, and Push's proclamation of being feared by a lot of people is backed up by his very intense bars. He opens up his verse saying this: "These drug dealer rollies is my TikTok and Triller. Insecure bitches, get lip fillers." Classic Pusha T. Like I said, Push absolutely ate this track up. It could have been a lot better with that Nas feature. I feel like it just would have been such a cool moment. I mean, can you imagine having Nas, Jay-Z, and Kanye all on the same record? That's insane. But despite the lack of that feature, the song still hits 100%. Interestingly enough, this is the track that Pharrell heard that made him reach out to Pusha T and say, hey, you're too good to be just a mixtape rapper. I want to lead you in a direction so your next album has a narrative. And ironically, in the same way that Pharrell had Pusha T step out of his box when writing bars and verses and choruses for It's Almost Dry, he would do the same, stepping out of his comfort zone when creating the beat for track 11. Push reflects back on his days as a coke dealer in Virginia on Open Air. Again, we hear that "they're gonna die" soundbite as Push reflects back on how dealing coke actually affected a lot of personal relationships in his early life. Push also describes a feeling of hopelessness that comes from living in a poverty-stricken area. Just as Arthur Fleck feels as if the politicians of Gotham create empty promises and can't relate to those who are less privileged, Push connects the dots and reflects on the idea that his black heart is potentially a product of having a lack of hope as a kid growing up in Norfolk. Now, the final track on It's Almost Dry is absolutely my favorite, with a chilling instrumental that completely encapsulates the Joker theme. Track 12 is I Pray For You, featuring Malice and Labyrinth. Now, Clips has reunited on a track 3 times since their breakup in 2010, but this is the first time that No Malice has appeared on a Pusha T solo album. Labyrinth has these chilling opening lines that lead into these organs, and as the beat kicks in, this track just gives off the vibes of a closer, a grand finale to this record. Push boasts on his meteoric rise, from dealing and benefiting off others' addiction to becoming a mainstay in the hip-hop landscape. And it is here that he acknowledges his role as an anti-hero of sorts. Despite his drug-dealing past, despite his malicious way of handling conflict, people look up to Pusha T, and that is a hard concept for him to understand. He is not a good guy. He does not try to act like one. He does not try to play one. He is the villain of rap. But he is reluctantly a role model, as people look to his lyrics and flows for inspiration in day-to-day life, despite the fact that they haven't lived his oppression or even experienced the product he sold. And although he isn't exactly understanding of that just yet, he does recognize his impact and the way in which he has made an identity for himself since the time that Clips split up. In comes Malice with the second verse on this track, returning to the rap game for his little brother and coming in with some crazy bars. Malice, of course, dropped the No Malice name after converting to Christianity, and he speaks on his faith, shouting out DMX in his verse here. He even mentions temptations he faces due to being back on a track with Pusha T, having flashbacks to when he mainly rapped about his drug-dealing past, but he ties things up in an awesome way. He mentions Push's identity as a karma-seeking villain, and although Malice is now a God-fearing man, Push is still lyrically lethal and won't take the higher road before giving people what they deserve. It shines a light on the contrast between the two brothers' morals at this point in their lives. And although Malice has moved on from coke rap, he still tips his cap to his family as he closes out his verse. Now a man of God who seeks repentance over vengeance, he hands that responsibility, that torch over to the villain of rap, hip-hop's Joker, Pusha T.